Good evening and welcome to the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. We are about to begin this very important lecture. Can we please be on seat as the speaker and the guests, the chairman, take their seat? And as they come, please be mindful to kindly put your phones on mute. Thank you.
President of the Academy, past presidents of the Academy, fellows of the Academy, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, students, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, I warmly welcome you to day 4 of the series of lectures marking the 65th anniversary celebrations of the Academy. As has been the tradition tonight, we climax the celebrations with the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lecture. And the program is streaming live via Zoom, Facebook, and on the Academy's YouTube page. The Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lecture was first delivered in 2003 by Professor Alexander Kwapong, who many of you will recall was the first Ghanaian Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, and also a foundation member of the Academy. And at the time, he was chairman of the Council of State. His topic was the Academy's foundations and its role in national development. Another foundation member, Professor J.H. Kwablanketia, gave the 2004 Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lecture on Kwame Nkrumah and the Arts. Since then, we have had a lecture every year as indicated in your brochure. This year, the 2024, we are privileged to continue with the tradition on a topic that must concern us all. And the speaker will be introduced shortly. I'll now introduce the chairman for this evening's function. He is Professor Opoku, Kofi Opoku Nti, who is the president of the Academy. He is a former dean of the University of Ghana Business School and the first occupant of the Unilever Professorial Chair in Business at the University of Ghana. Professor Opoku Nti is a member of several academic societies, including Public Choice Society, the Institute of Operations Research and Management Sciences, and the European Association of Industrial Economists. He's a member of the board of the National Vaccine Institute, a member of the Presidential Advisory Council on Science, Technology, and Innovation, Director of Universal Hospitals Group, Chairman of Claim Limited, and Chairman and Managing Director of Le Monde Foods Limited. Please help me in welcoming Professor Opoku Nti for a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to see so many fellows here today. My job today is very simple, which is to introduce our speaker, Emeritus Professor Clifford Tagoe, my Vice Chancellor. He'll be talking today about developments in higher education in Ghana, searching for relevance. And there's nobody better qualified to talk about that than Professor Tagoe. Clifford Tagoe is Emeritus Professor of Anatomy at the University of Ghana Medical School, a former Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, and a Fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. He has also taught and done research at universities in Nigeria, the UK, USA, and Ghana, and has published widely in reputable anatomy journals. He is a former president of the Anatomical Society of West Africa. Professor Tagoe has served as a member of the Council of the Association of Commonwealth Universities, ACU, member of the Administrative Board of the International Association of Universities, IAU, and in 2011, he led a visiting panel to the University of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, at the invitation of the university's chancellor. He was also a member of IAU team to assist Malaysia and the University of Botswana in the review of their internationalization policies. Here in Ghana, from 2012 to 2017, Emeritus Professor Clifford Tagoe was the chairman of the erstwhile National Council for Tertiary Education, now part of Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, GTEC. He chaired the committee that drafted the tertiary education policy and was a member of the team that drafted the 2018 to 2030 Education Strategic Plan. He was also the foundation chairman of Vodafone Ghana Foundation, chairman of the Council of the Center for Scientific Research into Plant Medicine, now Center for Plant Medicine Research, and until recently, the chairman of the
figures in the sub-region. In Ghana, the older people may remember Dr. Benjamin William Kwame, who was the first Ghanaian to be trained in Western Orthodox medicine. Dr. J.E. Kesley Hayford, author of the famous book Ethiopia Unbound, and a former president of the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. I'm sorry. I've already been asked to be very careful so the lights don't go off again. The Aborigines Rights Society and Kojo Bochio, who held a number of different positions in the Kwame Nkrumah government. These are notable alumni of Arabic College from Ghana. But the introduction of higher education in Ghana can be traced to the establishment of Achimota College, which Governor Gordon Guggisberg envisaged to become a university college. He stated this clearly in his address on the 9th of October 1923 at the opening of the Gold Coast Hospital, Kolebu Teaching Hospital, when commenting on the training of medical doctors. He had expressed concern that the training of African doctors abroad was not efficient. In his view, with the new hospital and the university college at Achimota, medical students could be admitted for local training in part or wholly. Okay. Sorry, they are well into the. Sorry. Now my slides don't look nice anymore because they took the color out of the whole thing. So he expressed concern about the training. So he felt that with the hospital and the college being built at Achimota, training could be done in part or in whole. By the early 1930s, a university department had been established at Achimota and was preparing students for examinations of the University of London. The intermediate arts, intermediate science economics, intermediate engineering, and BSc engineering. It is on record that Dr. R.P. Bafo, who became the first Ghanaian principal and later vice chancellor of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, studied for his external degree in mechanical engineering from the University of London on Ghanaian soil at Achimota. Indeed, it was the first product of that program. Now, in light of agitations by the educated elite in West Africa, the British government set up a commission led by Sir Walter Elliot, known as the Elliot Commission, which was charged to report on the organization and facilities of the existing centers of higher education in British West Africa, and to make recommendations regarding future university development in that area. Now, this was done on 13 June 1943. Before they could start the work, a second commission chaired by the Honorable Mr. Justice Cyril Asquith in the Asquith Commission was set up in August. But in this case, to consider the principles which should guide the promotion of higher education, learning and research, and the development of universities in the colonies, and to explore means whereby universities and other appropriate bodies in the United Kingdom may be able to cooperate with the institutions of higher education in the colonies in order to give effect to these principles. The Asquith Commission's recommendations basically defined the nature of what a colonial university or university college should look like. That is why the colleges set up at that time, the University College of Ghana, Furabe College, University College of Ibadan, Khartoum University College, and Makerere became known as Asquith colleges. The Elliot Commission's report, however, created a controversy, as it had both the majority and the minority parts. The majority of the members, including the committee's chairman, Sir Elliot, and 3 West African representatives, favored what we call a Trinitarian arrangement, by which we mean that every colony, Nigeria, Gold Coast, and Sierra Leone, should have their own university college. Sierra Leone was to take care of the Gambia. So then the minority, however, decided that we should have a Unitarian, that is a single university, what they call the West African University College at Ibadan, and then have territorial territorial colleges in the other countries. So Ibadan will be the main university of West Africa. Achimota will be a territorial college. Furabe College will be a territorial college. And then there will be another one in eastern Nigeria. Because you know their education was very, very important to them. Now, much discussion followed the submission of the reports of the two commissions. The details of these are beyond the scope of this lecture, and I would refer those interested to Ajayi, Goma, and Johnson, and then Abudeka and Benin for further information. Now, the British government initially accepted the minority report, but following vigorous objections from the people of West Africa, the decision was changed in favor of the majority report. The plan in the Gold Coast was for Achimota College to become a university college, but this did not happen, much to the disappointment of many. Rather, the students at its university department, 92 of them, 90 men and 2 women, were transferred to form the pioneer class of the newly established University College of the Gold Coast. But then Achimota College provided facilities for the institution. So on the 11th of August, by the Gold Coast Ordinance number 6, the University College of the Gold Coast was established for the purpose of providing for and promoting university education, learning, and research. It was affiliated to the University of London and renamed University College of Ghana after independence in 1957. But during the discussions on the establishment of the University College, Ashanti region was promised an institution of higher learning. Thus, the College of Technology, Science and Arts, Kumasi, which was better known as or popularly known as the College of Technology, was established on the 6th of October, 1951, by Gold Coast Ordinance number 19. That day, I was exactly 2 years old. For the purpose of providing for studies, training, and research in technology, science, and arts, it also operated in a special relationship with the University of London. Now, in the 1950s and 60s, the two institutions grew. This is because they were considered objects of national pride, and their funding was secure, with a 5-year budget being the norm. And even then, the provision was made for inflation for projects that took some years to complete. They laid down the foundations for the administration and other services, as well as physical infrastructure and initial staffing. The department established at the University College of the Gold Coast grouped into 3 faculties. That's a little loaded there. Faculty of Arts had English, Classics, Geography, History, Mathematics, and a School of African Studies. The Faculty of Commerce had Economics and Statistics, Economic History, and Accounting. And then the Faculty of Science had Botany, Chemistry, Physics, and Zoology. These were soon to be followed by Theology, French Studies, that became the modern languages. Phonetics became linguistics. It was philosophy and postgraduate school of education, which later became the Institute of Adult Education. There was also a demonstration school as the university primary, now basic school. Faculty of Agriculture and Agricultural Research stations at Nungwakpong and Kade were all put in place. There were also 4 halls of residence for students and staff accommodation, a bookshop, library, police station, convocation hall and buildings, and all these things were in place by 1961. The College of Technology, Science and Arts in Kumasi started in January 1952 with 200 students from the Achimota Teacher Training College. And later that year, students were admitted to the Engineering School and Department of Commerce. By 1961, agriculture, pharmacy was started by transferring the Kolebu Hospital Dispensing School to Kumasi, and then building technology, town planning were all added. They also had staff and student accommodation. Now, student numbers started growing. So by the 1961-62 academic year, Legon had 682 students, and Kumasi had 708. Now, this, although the number is growing, this pace was too slow, and therefore, the first place, more second schools were built, and six forms were started so as to generate more eligible students. Now, one of the key things that happened around the same time, 1962, or 61, 62, was the formation of an international commission on higher education. This was led by Mr. Kojo Bochio, then Minister of Agriculture, to advise on the future of university education in the country. Major outcomes of the Commission's recommendations included making the 2 institutions, Legon and Kumasi, independent universities, independent of University of London, to award their own degrees. Then there was the issue of a 3rd university. But the interesting thing about the 3rd university is that whilst the commission was working, the government announced at a program in Cape Coast that they were going to give them a university. So, of course, the commission had no choice but to recommend a university. Of course, we know that Nkrumah was always in a hurry anyway. He didn't have time to mess around. So, anyway, so eventually, on the in October 1962, the University of Cape Coast was established in a special relationship with the University of Ghana to offer preliminary degree and graduate teachers courses in arts and science, and diploma courses in science and mathematics for teachers in the lower classes in secondary and technical schools and teacher training colleges. On 1st October 1971, it became an autonomous university with power to award its own degrees. So I consider that the establishment of the University College of Cape Coast, University of Cape Coast, completed the first generation of our universities. But it was not all rosy. As we entered the 70s, the economic downturn began. So the governments in the 70s started seriously looking at the funding of the universities. I believe it also happened in the lower rungs of the education ladder. And the concept of cost sharing, the cost sharing we see now, was mooted as far back as the early 70s. The first attempt was in 1971 by the Bourgeois government to introduce a students' loan scheme. And naturally, the students objected. But what prevented that from happening was the government's overthrow on January 13th, 1972, by Kutu Acheampong's National Redemption Council. The military government itself eventually picked up the idea and in 1975 successfully introduced or reintroduced the scheme. And this was funded by the now GCB Bank. It was Ghana Commercial Bank. But the mechanisms put in place for recovery, or the mechanism put in place for recovery, was not effective, and there was a very high default rate. Now, when the PNDC came, with PNDC Law 155, they made efforts with some success to recover the loans. I think it was at that time that I paid mine. Because before then, when you went to commercial bank, they didn't know how to collect the money. So we had to hold on. And PNDC Law 155 made it, 1986, made it possible for us to pay. But a new law came not long after, Law 276, which basically repealed the NRC decree and also the Law 155. And this time, it was a scheme operated by SSNIT, the Social Security and National Insurance Trust. And this operated until 2005, when it was replaced by the current Student Loans Trust Fund. Now, this present fund also went through some metamorphosis from 2005 until 2011, when we got what we have now. So governments continue to look for new and sustainable ways of funding higher education. Unfortunately for us, it was believed at that time, especially by the development partners, that returns on investment on higher education were considerably lower than those of basic education. Of course, now they've turned around. And the first casualty of this thinking was the free boarding and lodging policy. But there was a bigger problem of the deterioration of academic facilities in the face of dwindling subvention to the higher education subsector. And this called for re-evaluation of the entire system. So that brings us looks like we're having challenges with with all the energy sources, including the battery. So the government in 1987 set up another committee, the University Rationalization Committee, chaired by the then Deputy Minister, Secretary for Education, Professor S.C. Sutherland Addy. And I believe that their work brought about the most far-reaching reforms that we've had in the tertiary sector. They were to undertake a comprehensive review of the post-secondary education or post-secondary education and to make recommendations for reform. Now, their reform recommendations have such wide-ranging effects that I believe that it is worth spending a little time on, because the current state of higher education is basically defined by those reforms. So they raised a number of issues. That the question of impact of the universities on society and national development, there appear to be a disjuncture between university education and national development process. The adverse national economic crisis, education and standards were falling, no equipment, no essential teaching materials, low morale among staff, and there was complete stagnation. Growing rigidity of individual subsystems in the tertiary subsector. Basically, every part, whether it's polytechnics, universities, special things, everybody was doing their own thing. There was no, or there were no linkages between them. Courses were not flexible, so as many people as possible can access the programs. And it was also believed that the programs overlapped so much that the choice was not wide enough. Then there was the issue of financing, and they raised the question about the affordability of free tertiary education. And then the issue of arts students, the humanities, the size, the sheer size of the humanities. You could, even at KNUST, which is a pure science, it's supposed to be pure science, the College of Arts and the Humanities has more students, is the largest in terms of student numbers than any of the other colleges. So the reforms eventually wanted to achieve certain outcomes. Reorganize the overall administration of tertiary education, create new institutions, upgrade existing ones, expand enrollment, reform and upgrade course structures and so on, including improving efficiency. Now, the implementation of these reforms was supported by loans or grants from the African Development Fund and also from the World Bank. So there was a lot of money to support the implementation. Now, there are two of them. The tertiary education rehabilitation project was supported by the African Development Fund with $15 million, and the tertiary education project by the World Bank through the International Development Agency. Now, the one by the African Development Fund provided a lot of facilities such as libraries, classroom blocks, equipment, consumables, supplies, non-residential student facilities, technical assistance and training, and rehabilitation of laboratories at the University of Ghana, University of Cape Coast, and UST. Sorry, when I say UST, it's really KNUST, but at that time it was called University of Science and Technology. And then the existing 6 polytechnics. For the World Bank funding, the large inputs of instructional large inputs of instructional materials. They address the relevance of polytechnic curricula with technical assistance and so on. There was a lot of special staff development programs in the polytechnics, and there are people here who can vouch because they were heading polytechnics at that time. The polytechnics were reorganized, their councils were established, there were professional development opportunities for a number of staff. A sort of research fund was introduced. I don't think anybody remembers that much. Then, of course, regulatory bodies like National Accreditation Board, so that was established. Then the universities brought in the hostel fees at that time. Now, so basically, one of the things was to do a cost recovery. So the users will now contribute something. There was also the Teaching and Learning Innovation Fund, TALIF, and that ran actually for 7 years, but it was meant to raise the quality of tertiary education, level teaching and learning activities, sharpen the relevance of skills content of polytechnic education, improve the efficiency by which polytechnics, universities, and system supervisory institutions manage the academic programs, and through the combined effect of these, opening up greater access to tertiary level academic programs in order to meet the increases in demand brought about by population growth and globalization. Now, let's just say that the TALIF was a highly successful venture, and according to the World Bank itself, they achieved 82% success in running it. Now, there were other major reforms, other major outcomes of the reforms. Regulatory bodies were established. So there's the National Council for Tertiary Education, which was established in 1993 by Act 454 to advise government on the development of the subsector. We note here that before then there was a National Council for Higher Education, which when the soldiers came in the revolutionary period, they abolished. And so there was only a small higher education secretariat within government. Now, the National Board for Professional and Technician Education and the Council for Technical and Vocational Education were also established to regulate the TVET sector. Now, new funding regimes were also introduced. The cost-sharing policy was now firmly on the ground, and this required students to pay user fees towards the cost of running academic and residential facilities. The universities in the year 2000, out of frustration with the severe shortfalls in budget allocations from government, actually proposed the charging of the fees for use of the academic and residential facilities. Government hesitated. Of course, everybody feared the backlash from students. But eventually they had to accept it. But during the period when they even accepted it, they asked the universities to wait so that they'll find the money and pay for the students. And this was what caused the then Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana to tell them to their face that universities are not run on government promises, and insisted that the students should pay, and then when government money comes, we refund. That was done for 2 years, and without notice, it stopped. So no more refunds for the students, which for parents, it was good because you knew you were paying. When the refunds were made, the students never told their parents about. It was in a meeting that I got to know that refunds had been made for my 2 children had just chopped my money. Now, at the national level, the Ghana Education Trust Fund, sourced from an earmarked portion of the value-added tax, was established in 2000. The act was slightly amended recently, 2018, but it was to provide the much-needed funds for infrastructure, equipment, and faculty development. I've already mentioned the loan scheme. Now, the upgrade of second-cycle institutions to tertiary status. Several second-cycle institutions were upgraded and designated as tertiary. These included the National Film and Television Institute, NAFTI, the Ghana Institute of Journalism, GIJ, the Regional Maritime Academy, the School of Forestry, all the nursing training colleges, the teacher training colleges, and agricultural colleges. So the tertiary education really became university and non-university institutions. New institutions were also established, and this is the group that I call the second generation of universities. The University of Education, Winneba, the University for Development Studies, and the University of Mines and Technology, UMAT, may be considered the second generation, as they were all born out of the University Rationalization Committee's recommendations. The University of Education, Winneba, was established in 1992 as a multi-campus university college by the amalgamation of the Winneba-based Specialist Training College, National Academy of Music, Advanced Teacher Training College, the School of Languages at Ajumaku, St. Andrew's Agricultural Training College at Ashanti Mampong, and the Kumasi Advanced Technical Teachers College. The central administration was, of course, based at Winneba, and it operated, the college operated in a special relationship with the University of Cape Coast until 2004, when it gained autonomy. In 2020, the Kumasi and Mampong campuses were separated from Winneba to constitute a new institution, the Akenten Apia Menka University of Skills, Training, and Entrepreneurial Development. Quite a mouthful. So you just simply call it AMUSTED, and you'll be fine. Now, although the idea of situating a higher education institution in northern Ghana has been discussed as far back as 1953, it took nearly 40 years for it to become a reality. The University for Development Studies, UDS, was established in 1992 as a fully fledged institution on the concept of a developmental university, a university that was embedded in the community and helped the community to solve its problems. It was to concentrate on the fields of agriculture, medicine, and health sciences, and integrated development studies, with the Brongafo, northern and upper regions as its field. In 2019, the WA campus and Navrongo campus were separated and made independent universities, namely the Simon Diedong Dombo University of Business and Integrated Development Studies at WA, and the CK Tedam University of Technology and Applied Science at Navrongo. The University of Mines and Technology was the third university to emerge from the URC recommendations. It was formed from the merger of two KNUST schools of mines, one at Kumasi and one at Takwa, first to become the Western University College of KNUST in 2001, and subsequently the University of Mines and Technology in 2004. Now, the famous GIMPA, Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, began in 1961 as the Institute of Public Administration to develop the public administrative system and so on. Now, the Institute now operates as a public tertiary institution under the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration Act 2004, with a vastly expanded mandate or object to provide education, training, and services in the fields of leadership, management, and public administration for the public sector, private sector, and NGOs. The Ghana Communication Technology University traces its origins to the Ghana Telecom Training Center, which was established in 1948 by the Post and Telecommunications, that's PNT, to train technicians and linesmen to operate and maintain telecommunications equipment and plants. Over time, with improved or upgraded equipment and infrastructure and increased course offerings, the center became the Ghana Telecom University College. So it was a private university college at that time. And in 2020, by an act of parliament, it became the Ghana Communication Technology University. Now, then we saw a rush of new universities, which then composed the third generation. Now, and all this has happened since 2011. Sometimes the institution was built new, complete. There are other times when mergers of existing universities. And then separation of units of university, existing university. I call that dismembering of the universities. I have been saddened by the UDS one, because the UDS was a beautiful experiment, which I thought was going to form the basis for other universities, but been dismembered to honor you know who. And then finally, there is the upgrading or conversion of existing universities. The first category, University of Health and Allied Sciences, Ho, the University of Energy and Natural Resources, Sunyani, and the University of Environment and Sustainable Development at Somanya. And Somanya is supposed to have a campus at Bonsu in the Eastern region. It has not graduated its first batch, and it's already dismembered. So Bonsu is now going its separate ways. And in the second category, the University of Media, Arts and Communications, or UNIMAC, formed from the merger of the Ghana Institute of Journalism, the Ghana Institute of Languages, and the National Film and Television Institute in 2020. The third category, of course, were the ones that have been yanked away from their parent universities, and I've mentioned them already. The CK Tedam, the SD Dombo, and so those were the Amusted and SD Dombo, CK Tedam, and at Kenten, Piamenka University of Skills Training and Entrepreneurial Development. This one, if you go to Nigeria and mention it, they'll simply ask you, is it also at Legon? They will not try to remember the name at all. Now, the University of Professional Studies was founded as a private post-secondary institution, the Institute of Professional Studies, in 1965. But it was absorbed into the public system in 1979 by the Supreme Military Council and elevated to tertiary status by the IPS Act, Act 566. In 2008, it became a fully fledged university by presidential charter. And then, by an act of parliament in 2012, it was renamed University of Professional Studies. Note that there's no Accra at the end of it. How they managed to sneak in the Accra, only God knows. Now, let me now touch on the polytechnic universities and the whole idea of TVET. Now, formal technical education in the country can be traced back to the early decades of the last century, with the establishment of the Accra Technical School in 1909 and the Aswanzi Technical Institute in 1917. The Accra Technical School was moved to Takoradi to become the Government Technical School in 1939, and eventually has metamorphosed into the very, very famous GSTS, that is the Ghana Secondary Technical School. Now, with years, the other trade schools were established, trade schools and technical institutes. A new one in Accra, 1949, Tamale, 1951, Kumasi and Takoradi, 1954, Sunyani, Ho, and then what is known as the Accra Technical Training Institute. Training people in commercial and technical subjects towards the crafts and technician certificates of the Royal Society and City and Guilds. Well, the thing is suffering doom so I will just go on. So all these were set up primarily because of the developments taking place. Timber industry, railways, and so on. All those things were there, and the craftsmen were needed. Now, they were eventually upgraded to polytechnics to enable them offer the Higher National Diploma, HND, under the Ghana Education Service. Now, the URC, University Rationalization Committee, recognized that the polytechnics could better serve the nation if their courses were upgraded to higher middle level of technician training, leading to the award of the HND. which they felt should be equivalent to the first degree, but that they should not depart from the practical training that was required. Now, the provision of such programs, they felt, will complete the cycle of technical education and provide capacity for higher level technician training and practical research, which at that time did not exist. In 1992, there were 6 polytechnics: Accra, Takoradi, Kumasi, Ho, Tamale, and Cape Coast, which were set up by the Polytechnic Law and were elevated to tertiary status and empowered to award degrees, but under the supervision of the National Board for Professional and Technician Examinations. So that board supervised them. But in 2007, with the Polytechnics and other Polytechnics Act, the institutions gained complete academic autonomy. So as you can see, as time went on, more and more institutions were just added onto the tertiary subsector. And the implication was that everybody was now going to depend on the GET fund. So there was now very little to go around. Now, despite all these laudable developments, products of polytechnic education face challenges in respect of progression to higher degrees, placement at work as against university degrees, and the generally low public perception of being inferior. HND holders seeking higher qualifications were admitted to universities usually to the second year, in fact in some cases to the first year, and this was found to be unsatisfactory and demeaning. The decision to convert polytechnics to technical universities was therefore a welcome development for most people. The technical universities, 10 in all, were converted from the polytechnics by the Technical Universities Act of 2016. So in addition to the higher national diploma programs, technical universities now offer the Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, Master of Engineering, Bachelor of Technology, Master of Technology, Master of Science. But they are still required to focus on practical-oriented education and research. I believe that Kumasi Technical University offers PhD degree in applied statistics. So the technical universities are now to provide a clear academic progression for technical, vocational education and training products. Now, private, let me see. Private provision of higher education. Now, we all know that private participation in the provision of education has been going on in this country for more than a century, especially at the basic and secondary levels. And Professor Diamenson's lecture 2 years ago actually gave good history of all these developments. Now, the roles played and significant contributions made by private organizations and individuals to the development and provision of pre-tertiary education has been well documented and acknowledged. Prior to the colonial government's establishment of Achimota College as a public school, the churches were already providing secondary education through schools like Fanspim, Wesley Girls, the St. Nicholas Grammar School, later Adisadel College, Accra High School by Reverend J.T. Roberts from Sierra Leone, and a few others in the various parts of the country. The 1992 Constitution is unequivocal about it, as stated in Article 25(2), that every person shall have the right at his own expense to establish and maintain a private school or schools at all levels and of such categories and in accordance with such conditions as may be provided by law. Now, prior to the liberalization in the early 1990s, only a few such institutions were in operation as theological or Bible colleges: the Trinity Theological Seminary, Valley View, and the Central Gospel Church. It was these and other religious bodies that seized the opportunity to enter the tertiary education space. And it is no surprise that the majority of chartered private institutions are actually faith-based. According to the data from GTEC, the number of private tertiary institutions at the higher education level in 2024 is 118, 118, under a variety of ownership types, ranging from individuals, corporate bodies, churches, to branch campuses of foreign universities. It looks like I may not be able to show you my illustrations. I have to. I think the battery is combed out completely. Okay, by the accreditation rules, these institutions have to be affiliated to and be mentored by already established universities. Through this system, quality is expected to be assured, and students of the mentee institutions normally graduate with the certificates of the mentoring institutions. Now I know that they are double. They will have the two logos on your certificate. Now 11 of the private institutions have received presidential charter and now award their own degrees. The private universities and university colleges have introduced new programs and some flexibility in the modes of delivery, thereby expanding the choices available to students. So now briefly, what does the current landscape look like? Overall, there are 311 recognized tertiary institutions in the country. In terms of ownership, majority are privately owned already. 168 or 54% of the institutions are degree awarding, consisting of the 118 private institutions that I've mentioned, 32 public institutions, and 18 others. Only 11 of the private institutions are chartered with powers to award their own degrees. The 32 public institutions consist of 16 universities, 10 technical universities, and 6 specialized or professional institutions. So what do they mean by that? There are various government-owned institutions like the Survey and Mapping School, the School of Local Government Studies, the Maritime Academy, and so on. Now, student enrollment. Mr. President, between 1991 and 2004, enrollments in higher education in sub-Saharan Africa has risen exponentially. And at its peak in 2005 was estimated to be growing at a rate of 15.6% per annum. Student enrollments have increased in tandem with the expansion in the numbers of institutions as well as expansion in facilities at the institutions. The total number of students in tertiary institutions in 2023 was 711,695. But the public universities in particular saw tremendous growth in student numbers, where the total enrollments rose from 123,247 in 2008-2009 academic year to 422,583 in 2022-2023. And that is a rise of 342%. Significant contributions to these numbers came from the three largest public institutions, University of Ghana, KNUST, and UCC. All these three institutions now enroll well over 70,000 students each. Indeed, the figure I've seen for KNUST it's not been confirmed, but it's about 90,000. So we now have three universities growing to become mega universities. A mega university is when you have 100,000 or more. Now, similar growth has taken place in the polytechnics and technical universities. But it is slower than in the public universities. The contribution of private higher education institutions had not met the initial promise and expectations of mopping up the excess qualified applicants. The total annual enrollments in private higher education institutions seem to be stagnating or plateauing and hovering usually around 60,000 or a little less than 70,000 in 2023. And this is despite the fact that they constitute 79% of the institutions. But the problem is that the majority of them are what I call small, with individual total student enrollments of under 500. Few of them are in the thousands. So together, the private institutions 12.26% of students in the subsector. Now, the increase in student enrollments is reflected in improvements in the gross enrollment ratio, GER, which is a key performance indicator when you talk about education. Okay, so let's say that in about 2005, we were around 5%. In fact, we stayed 1% for a long time from 1948 until 1993. We were only around 2%. So we have grown, and in 2023, it's 22%. That compares favorably with what is happening in the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, which is an average of 9.4. But we're still short of the target for 2023 of 25%. Now, quickly, when sex are disaggregated, we have got to the point where women form 48.74% of the students. So there's a parity index of 0.95. Our target is to reach 50-50. In science, we have managed to rise from 28 to 72 several years back in 2014 to 43 to 57. But the government's norm, the target is 60 science and 40 humanities. So we still got a very long way. Mr. Chairman, let me say a little word about our institutions. Now, very often when things happen The impression is given that it's government that's doing all those things. But that is not so. The institutions, from their own initiatives, are doing wonderful things for the future generation. So their response to all the things that were happening, one of the key things that they began to do was to plan strategically, to have strategic plans. Now, this was led by the University of Ghana in 1993 with a 7-year plan. It's now probably in its 4th plan session. Now, these plans, in these plans, the institutions have defined visions and missions that they make efforts to attain. And the plans have helped them to keep an eye on the ball, as it were. And through the plans, they have sought to build an international profile and presence to improve generation of funds and provide vital infrastructure, ICT, laboratory resources, library resources, and so on, including research and postgraduate training. There's been also some internal reorganization where the most far-reaching is the collegiate system. Now everybody is going collegiate. Of course, there are downsides to these things because you increase the administrative costs because each one has its own administration. But the whole idea is to decentralize and decisions made very quickly at the periphery. Sometimes we've had to change the names of the departments and so on to make them more attractive. We changed archaeology, simply archaeology, to archaeology and heritage studies, and that seems to be doing fine. We no longer have zoology, but we have animal biology and conservation science and so on. So a lot has been happening. Now, there are other administrative structures. Some 20 years ago, they started putting together research and graduate studies headed by deans to give, meaning to it. At Legon, they have an office of research, innovation, and development headed by a pro-vice chancellor to tell you that they mean business. Now, academic programs have been restructured because this is crucial to the relevance of university education, that academic programs must offer or must give the client, which is the student, something to go and chop with. So it's not just simply growing of the training of the mind. Now we're looking at doing something extra. Now, the institutions have also, on their own, improved their ICT infrastructure. If I remember, Legon spent about $45.7 million US dollars to provide infrastructure for all its campuses throughout the country. So ICT has enabled management information systems with most academic activities being done online, student registration, entering of grades, etc. They've also done a lot in terms of infrastructure. And of course, the GET Fund has funded some of these things. But some of the institutions have been very bold to actually go commercial, to get money to do those things. When you start that kind of thing, you hope that the person who follows you will follow through. Professor Nestaite was not that lucky. His buildings are still sitting there. We hope that they will not wait until some of these young people had become vice chancellors to be completed. Now, they've also made efforts to internationalize, because as a higher education institution, you are not only a national or local institution, you must also be a global institution. This is what a chap called Margin Singh refers to as being GLONACAL, global, national, and local. There is quite a bit about what internationalization means. But basically, it is a process of integrating an international, intercultural, and global dimension into the purpose of the institution, its functions as teaching, research, and service, and the delivery of higher education. And many activities can take place: student mobility, study abroad, joint degree programs, changes in curriculum, language studies, and so on. And to facilitate the process, various offices have been established, international programs offices, and so on. Now, the thing is that international students bring, apart from enriching the environment, they also bring money. Two ways about it. When you go to Legon, they have an international programs building. It's a huge building that was built largely from student fees, international student fees. So the internationalization is crucial to the survival of the institutions. Now, international collaboration has become a very important part of the Ghanaian universities' portfolio, with supported programs like the Next Generation of Academics by Carnegie, the World Bank's African Centers of Excellence, MasterCard Foundation. They're all funding one thing or the other. And the latest which is an innovation onto the African higher education and research space, is the African Research Universities Alliance Initiative, the ARUA. I don't know how many of you know about this, but if you want to know, it's a foundation general, is it general secretary or executive secretary? Society has built empire there. And if there are any universities that are not members, maybe you will go and join. Now, research and postgraduate training, that has been ongoing and improving. And we now, unfortunately, because we can't show you, because there's more information on there, there's a steady flow of PhD graduates. The point is that we need the researchers to carry out the research so we can move on in development. And it is the PhDs that are going to do that. Now, but we must say that the quality of knowledge generated within the higher education institutions and its availability to the wider economy is now becoming increasingly critical to national competitiveness. In recent past, the PhD enrollment has increased about 5 times in the public universities, from 1,081 in 2014 to 5,008 in 2023. So there's more. The private universities are also not doing badly. A few of them are very active in postgraduate training. But this is encouraging, but the rate is nowhere near the 1,500 or more that South Africa produces from its 23 universities. And that is a PhD production level that is considered adequate to propel a lower middle income country like ours to a higher level. Now, we also are making efforts to become world class. I don't have the time to give you the qualities of all the qualities of world class university, but you must have a high concentration of talent. That is both faculty and students. The students must be top class students, abundant resources, and the governance must also be favorable. Mr. Chairman, I think I should be winding down now. The main challenges that I have picked out, that the issue of equity and access still with us. We seem to be doing well with the gender issue, but we are in a situation where our GER, the gross enrollment rate, is still very low, 22%, and that is not too good for developmental purposes. But we do have a situation where a large proportion, currently about 20% of qualified applicants don't get anywhere to go. We're not even beginning to talk about those who did not qualify the first time. We should not be surprised that the road leads all the way to Pristia Huni Valley for Galamsey, because we have got a large number of youth not in education, not in employment, not in training, NEET. Many of them qualify to go to university or tertiary education, but we don't have the space. So we need to look at that critically. Now, another aspect of this is that students, majority of the students are still coming from the so-called elite schools. We can talk about 50 schools. In recent times, some lesser-known schools have made inroads into the Bonnie Secondary School, Methodist girls from Banfi. Those ones are winning awards all over the world. They have pushed some of the people. So basically, the situation that Emeritus Prof. Mensah described in his J.D. Dankwa Memorial Lectures of the year 2000, that's 24 years ago, that is Education in Ghana, a tool for social mobility and social stratification. There's a question mark there. The situation still persists. Now, another problem that often we don't look at is the distribution of the institutions. Now, 50% of the 151 higher educational institutions are found in Greater Accra alone, in the Accra metropolis. And another 15% in the Ashanti region. How we expect those in the other regions to attend university, only God knows. Because what it means is that unless we have distance programs that they can access, they have to go to these main centers with the additional cost of transportation, cost of accommodation, and so on and so forth. So the equity and access issue is still with us. Everybody knows the issue of funding, that we've never had enough, and it doesn't look like we're going to have enough in the foreseeable future. Although we expect 10% full fee paying students and 10% international students, for some time now, the number of international students have gone down. And so it looks like we are loading the whatever is left onto the full fee paying Ghanaian students. And more and more are now becoming full fee paying students. I don't believe that our constitution really allows that. But the institutions must run. No two ways about it. We've got the GET Fund. The GET Fund has now lost its way. There's no reason why the GET Fund must be giving scholarships from their offices. No. The scholarships should be given to the institutions to manage. I am even questioning whether the scholarship secretariat, as we know it, has not outlived its usefulness. The scholarships must pass through the institutions. They know best. Now, let me look at the two last points, what we call the mission drift, mission creep. Very soon, when you look at KNUST, you look at UCC, you look at Legon, you will not know the difference. You will not know the difference. They've been set up for specific things. UCC does not, education is not compulsory anymore. But that was the reason why it was set up. But the differentiation that we're talking about actually gives people a wider choice, because then each institution is different and is offering something different, gives a wider choice. And everybody then has the ability for social mobility. It also meets the needs of everybody. Now, it will also be in response to demand and will meet the needs of the labor market. With differentiation, we can mix mass education, mass higher education with elite education, because we can have the elite institutions. You go to China, Peking University, Tsinghua University, they are there, no challenges. One is general, one is technological. So a lot of the things that you find are, somebody is moving the thing for me. All right, but it's okay. I think I've said enough there. The last point in this problematic area is graduate unemployment. The bottom line, all the production lines that we've created, writing in the Legon Observer of 27th March 1970, under the title Legon, the Frustrated Tribe, observes as follows. At the time, and I quote, at the time when many educated Ghanaians were wanted to man the areas of bureaucratic administration in the civil service during the colonial days and immediately after, the future position of an undergraduate was assured. Vacation employment, the once enviable opportunity for students to obtain a few cedis and to test their importance in the corridors of business, and administrative power. That is now entirely out, except for the lucky few. Then the pre-graduation interview by heads of ministries competing to attract and induce students to go to their departments. This too is out. The grim prospect now is that unless the economy expands and unless society finds some other ways of utilizing the new university graduates, a time will come soon when university graduates in Ghana shall be queuing at labor exchange centers in their search for jobs. And I say how prophetic, because that is exactly what we're seeing now. The universities, of course, need to admit more because higher education is beneficial not only to the individual but also to society at large. As I stand here, I'm no student of economics, but I believe that we need a long-term human resource plan. Long-term human resource plan supported by a well-differentiated higher education system to provide the right mix of skills, as well as we also need an appropriately structured economy. My economist friends tell me that the structure of our economy is nothing to write home about. I don't know. What I know is that when I want $1, I now need about 17 cedis to get the dollar. So we need to begin to produce the graduates to become job creators rather than job seekers. This is a mantra that has been read many times. By training them, of course, to be critical, to have critical and creative thinking, the ICT skills must be top-notch, leadership skills, the so-called 21st century skills. But we must work with industry. The curricula must be drawn with the assistance of the practitioners in industry. And they must actually be part of our teaching staff. But for me, what the big universities now need to do is that they need to become not just teaching students entrepreneurial skills, but the universities themselves must become entrepreneurial, translating research into startup companies, spin-offs, and so on. We have a number of examples around. Many of you know about Silicon Valley, where government, the institutions, private investors have created billions of dollars. Our own friends, the United Kingdom, recently a study on the Cambridge University shows that its research and its research activities and link with industry in 2020-2021 contributed 30 billion pounds to the UK economy. And a large portion of it was in the east of England, where it is, showing itself truly embedded in the area. And that's about 23 billion of it is in that. In addition to that, the activities employ over 86,000 workers. That's one university alone. We can't begin to talk about Oxford, Warwick, and their science parks, and so on. So, of course, I don't think many of us can imagine that any of our universities can generate 30 billion anytime soon. But I believe that it is possible. Oh, okay. Well, I think I mentioned location of the universities, we have to look especially at the private universities. We look at the private universities. Most of them are too small to survive. They depend on student fees, so they're not growing. I see some with student numbers, unless the numbers are wrong, but I see one with 7. I see another with 37. You know, it's just mind-boggling. So I suggest that perhaps we can look at what happened in the US when Corporation asked Abraham Flexner to look at medical education. And his recommendations, upon his recommendations, nearly half of the 155 medical schools, either some of them merged and others closed completely. So again, it is possible to coax people to do either merge, or if they can't stand the fire, just quit. Because what we are seeing, it doesn't help anybody. Finally, let me mention governance. You know, in recent times, let's go even, the government and university interaction can be quite shaky. Kwame Nkrumah, when he became Chancellor of the University of Ghana in 1961, started dictating to the university. Vice Chancellor O'Brien said, no, the university is established by law. We have academic freedom. We choose our own courses. We choose our own lecturers. And he tells the story of, so one day he was in Cape Coast University at a function, like we are here. Then suddenly there's a group of rabble-rousers with placards. Why no Ghanaian professor in law? Why no Ghanaian professor in law? So they came and caused the ruckus and went out. After the function, when he got out, he saw all the placards and things broken. What was the problem? After they had gone round, went out, they were asking for their money. And the guy who brought them, organized them, did not have any money. So they beat him up. And, so we've always had these things, either the party or the leadership of the party. In Tanzania, Nyerere, who believed in similar things, sent his party general secretary to become, was he vice chancellor or registrar of the University of Dar es Salaam. So these things happen. Those may be extremes. But recently were attempts to sack out how much is going to be paid. People take their private planes and attend Board of Overseers meeting in Harvard. Free. They use their own money to go. When you are appointed a chancellor, it's an honorific thing. If you come to functions, we'll pay your accommodation, your transport, and so. But we can't give you a stipend. Now there's the practice of using university people to be chairman of the university councils. In one university, the person who was chairing was from the same university as an associate professor. Became chairman of the council and engineered for the council to make him a full professor. So please, I think this is a message that we should carry. These things should never happen. By all means, students and government will have kata. We all remember, was it in 1974, when Kutu Acheampong, out of frustration, referred to KNUST as the Kumasi Legon people. So, anyway, so, Mr. Chairman, I think time is far spent. Whoever is doing the wonders there, can you go to the... Yeah, okay. I've mentioned a number of these things that ought to be done. But quickly, we, of course, need to improve the equitable access by equitable distribution of the institutions. If it is the private sector, we have to find incentives for them to move into those areas. Now, we've had discussion on Open University for God knows how long. What we are now suggesting is that if that is not going to be possible, let us build a platform for all the institutions to be able to use to do their distance learning. And once we have that, there are so many retired lecturers and professors, they can be retrained to develop programs for the open and distance learning. We need a full differentiation, as I've explained. Just last night, I realized that UDS was going to be built on the American Community College model. And community college forms the base of the higher education pyramid, where people are trained in skills. So when they leave 2 years, you are ready for work. But they also give you enough training. So if you want to go to a university, 4-year college and so on, you can go at a later time. So we need, now that we don't have the polytechnics anymore, for me, there's a hiatus between the technical institutes now and the technical universities. We need, unless we want to bring back the polytechnics, I would prefer to have the community college concept. The GET fund must be reviewed. There are no two ways about it. It must be reviewed to make it more functional. Many of the things it's supposed to do, it cannot do. And what is irritating is that I have got my friend parliamentarian is here. The parliamentarians say they should be giving some of the money for development in their constituencies. And so, and without that, they will not approve the whatever formula. I don't think GET fund will be going to them for approval of any formula. Now, research and innovation, as I've said, the new kid on the block is the African Research Universities Alliance. And if there is a need to support that alliance, I think we should do so. But first, we have to also define our innovation system. Well-differentiated university system, CSIR, appropriate industry, and so on. Defined so everybody is recognized and everybody plays a part. So we can convert our research into services and products. And that, of course, brings the idea of strengthening academia, industry, linkages. I've said enough about the good governance. Now, artificial intelligence. I'm sure everybody expects me to talk about it. So with the mention, I have talked about it. Now, I had a nice slide. Can you go to the very last slide? Yes, I said it's food for thought. And I think it gels with the season that we are in. That every government degenerates when trusted to the rulers of the people alone. The people themselves, therefore, are its only safe depositories. And to render them safe, their minds must be improved to a certain degree. The point is that if we are uneducated, we will be ruled the way we want. Mr. Chairman, let me thank the Academy for the opportunity. Let me thank Tropical Cable and Conductor, the sole sponsor of this lecture. There are a number of other people, staff at Legon, staff at UCC, KNUST, GTech, so who all help with data for this lecture. So, Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a very, very lucid lecture. Please let's give him another round of applause. The presentation has been quite spectacular. It's like we sat here and we heard the whole trajectory of higher education in Ghana in a very, very lucid way. And I thank Professor Tagoe for enlightening us on what has happened. What he didn't know is that we were living on Cinderella time. The ECG warned us that at 8 o'clock, the lights will go off completely. Right? It didn't happen that way, because they came back and revised the time to 10 p.m. So we are okay. But I sent him a message and said, we have Cinderella time. At 8 o'clock, we shall go darkness. But he didn't seem to have noticed. But you're very lucky. Anyway, when I listened to the lecture, what I saw is that we started with a very, very simple structure. 1 university, 2 universities, 3 universities. Then suddenly, they became so complex that we put together Educational Reform Committee. And they more or less set the structure, the tone for many things that happened maybe 15 or 20 years after. And then as you listen to the talk, you also notice that the world has become so much more complicated in terms of the various components, the landscape, the challenges of the system, the mission drive, the unemployment issues, and all of that. That you think that there's another occasion for us to sit down and figure out what should be the total structure of our educational system. I want to focus on the youth unemployment because it has a lot of bearing on what is happening to our educational system. That people go to universities with the expectation that they will get value out of it. And if they finish and they can't get value, then the incentive to go for higher education is diminished. And therefore, it should be a circular thing that it works back to how do we make sure that people get value for higher education. And it is interesting that one of the changes that occurred along the way was that they said higher education had low returns in Africa. That was the World Bank's reason for funding lower primary education kind of strategy. And then but we know they were wrong, because you need higher education in order to drive the whole system. But we're also creating the situation where the returns to higher education is becoming uncertain and discouraging. And so we need to sit down and figure out, how do we tie the economy, the practical issues, the economy, the job creation, and all of that, and the linkage between industry and higher education, to make sure that we are indeed having an optimal structure for the growth of that sector. We have the perennial funding problem, and we need to figure out how to make sure that the economy is strong enough that higher education can be properly funded, because we cannot live on limited GET fund to cover many, many, many institutions. So we really have a dilemma as to how we shall sit down and structure an environment that will give us the kind of Cambridge university business venture capital linkages that creates that 40 billion pound economy around just one university. Legon can do something like that, and so can KNUST, Cape Coast, and even the new Apia Minka types of, it's called Mahmoud or whatever it's called, right? Amustad, and the EK Tedam, and all of those can have micro-enterprise satellites around them, so that people can really get value out of going to school, going to higher education, taking it, and having an immediate application for that. I want to thank Professor Tagoe for giving us this fantastic lecture, and for making the time to research it and to share his vision with us. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We want to thank the sponsors, Tropical Cable and Conductor, and the Bank of Ghana. Schools were here, some have disappeared. They've waited long enough, I think. Laboni Senior High, Accra Academy, and Accra Girls. Now, we are also grateful to ECG. When they came on, they said they'll switch us off at 8 o'clock. So we had to negotiate behind doors, and they've extended it to 10 o'clock. So we are grateful to them. I think all that ends well. We have had a thrilling 4-day celebrations of the Founders' Day of the Academy. And we thank all of you for supporting us, for coming. If you hadn't come, the place would have been empty. And we are grateful that you did make it. We look forward to next year, when we hope to put up another good show of the celebrations. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant evening. I think we can be upstanding and allow the party to depart. you.